It's Kelly Hill from RCR Wireless News here from the Mobile World Congress Barcelona 2024 show floor. This is day 2 of the show. It's even busier here today than it was yesterday, and the conversations are all around AI. Everyone that I've talked to is talking about AI. Everyone that they're talking to is talking about AI. If you don't have AI somewhere in your booth, you seem to be maybe a little bit behind the times right now. So we had Michael Dell of Dell Technologies, in his keynote yesterday talking about how rapid the adoption of AI has been, that it took years and years and years and years to get, 5 billion people on the internet. And with the release of ChatGPT and some of these other generative AI tools, the adoption and sort of the consumerization of AI has been extremely fast comparatively. And what that means for telecom is that because there's more familiarity with it, people are jumping immediately to, what can this do for me? What can this do for my business? What can this do for my network? And so we're starting to see some of those things sort of being grappled with at this show. I think one of the things that is also maybe following a little bit behind adoption, unfortunately, is sort of how this will be governed. And that was one of the conversations that I was having with IBM this morning, is all around governance. These models and the data that is the output of these models is only as good as what goes in. So what level of data are you starting with? Have you cleansed it to the point that it is safe and ethical to use, and as a result, what can you rely on the information that you're getting out of it? And then who also is keeping track of, when that model drifts, is it improving things? Is it not improving things? Is it getting worse over time or better? All of these things are sort of questions that have to be asked, and somebody has to be keeping an eye on the models. And so what guardrails are being put in? I was just over at the VMware Broadcom booth looking at a demo from IRA GPT. So, and it draws on information from actually Viavi Solutions network emulation, and it was actually really, really interesting. So, you can put in a query, and this one, for example, was, asking the model, can you chart the energy consumption, of site A, site B, site C, and then once you get that back, looking at, what is the use over time, and, so energy consumption related sort of queries and information coming out of the network. The very first thing that it does, though, when you put a query in, is the first response is whether or not that query is non-harmful. So that's an example of, and I think a really interesting one of, even when you're asking, very run-of-the-mill questions, is the AI's first response, is it a good query? Is it a safe query? Am I allowed to answer this? And so, so it's really interesting to see how some of the folks who are targeting the telecom space are starting to grapple with these questions. A lot of these conversations are happening. The adoption is fast. And I think there's definitely a desire to jump in very quickly with both feet. We're already hearing conversations about people using generative AI for chatbots, for customer care. Operators are very interested in what those use cases can mean for them, and also potentially for their businesses. Telecom speaks a different language, though, and when we're talking about large language models, something very fundamental in terms of, is your model a telecom trained large language model? Is it a healthcare trained large language model? Is it trained for a specific vertical for which you are trying to provide customer service? So these are just some of the things that are cropping up in conversations. I think a lot of interest, probably a lot of hype. We'll see where the industry ends up with this, but definitely a topic and a hot one here at MWC.